Welcome everyone. It's really nice to see you all. It's my Happy New Year to everyone. It's the first one I've led this year. I'll, I guess, just wait another minute in case there's one or two people arriving still. I expect most people are familiar with the format, but I'll begin by chanting the after we've done the dedication of offerings, the refuges and 5 precepts. And then we'll do a period of meditation, and I'll say, I'll give a short reflection, then invite you to ask some questions. So if you could initially put your questions into the chat, that works well. I found that very helpful. It's easier for me because I can read them, refer back to them. But then after that, if there are still questions when I have exhausted those, then I'll ask if you'd be very welcome to ask me by unmuting later on. So that's what the format will be this evening. I'll just share the screen. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sangham saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sangham saranang gacchami. The 5 precepts. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame Sumichachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Meriya Majjapamaditana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Sugatinyanti Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Niputinyanti Tasma Silam Visodhaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So make yourselves comfortable. I'm going to put a blanket all around me because it's a bit chilly. Yeah. I found it helpful to begin by breathing out a couple of times, a couple of deeper breaths. It's surprising how that simple taking of a couple of deeper breaths brings us into our body. And begins just by that small thing, it just calms the mind. We bring our attention into the body, not because we want to do something, to get something out of this practice, but it's just the spirit of noticing and trusting that the benefit of calming the mind will happen, or as a result of a natural process of noticing and sustaining tension. And that gradually the mind will calm down. It can create anxiety about anxiety. So we have to trust that the mind will calm down by itself when we practice this simple noticing of our experience. And bringing our attention to the body, we notice the experience of the physical form. We notice the posture. As we bring our attention to the posture, we can feel a natural straightening of the spine. Assuming an upright and balanced posture, we bring the shoulders back, tucking the chin, and establish the head in a natural, balanced position. The head on the shoulders, the upper body balanced on the seat, the cushion. Seeing if we can relax the legs. I always encourage people to pay some attention to the sensations in the body, because apart from anything else, we hold a lot of tension in the body, and it can be really helpful to actually notice, to notice that we have to pay deliberate attention. And we can do that by starting at the top of the head and letting our attention drop bit by bit down the face, the muscles around the face, the jaw, the forehead. And we hold a lot of tension in the face, and we can unclench those muscles. So first we'll have to notice. If we notice that we're holding tension in the jaw, then unclenching means relaxing the jaw. If we're holding tension around the nose, and around the upper cheekbones, for example, we can deliberately unclench those muscles. And see what happens. So as we discover that it is possible to relax the muscles in the face, we can extend that principle to the other parts of the body when we bring our attention to the neck and the shoulders, letting the shoulders drop. And tension in the arms and the hands. So if we notice tension, then we can invite those muscles to relax. And so too with the muscles around in the abdomen and the stomach, around the buttocks and the thigh muscles, muscles in the leg and in the feet. Wherever we notice tightness, we can invite those muscles to relax. Until we get right down to the toes. And this might be the first time today we've noticed our toes. And as we return our attention up the body, we can see if anything's changed, and where we notice tightness in those muscles, we can invite them again. Any of those muscles, any muscles we notice that are tense, we can let them relax, unclench. There's no success and failure, it's simply to notice, and if they don't unclench, that's fine. It's not a condition, but an invitation. Let that happen. If clenching a muscle is something we're doing, then we can stop doing it. Simply returning to a state of ease and relaxation. But even though we may have identified individual muscles and invited them to relax, we might have done that, but still the body might feel tense, a kind of feeling of tension. It can be really helpful just to breathe into that. Breathing in and breathing out tension, any tightness. Letting it go when we breathe out. Even using the word relax can be helpful. As I said at the beginning, taking a few deeper breaths. But as we notice the breath, we just notice the way it is. We're not trying to interfere with the breath, but allowing it just to come and go. That can be difficult in some ways, because as soon as we become aware of something, we think we seem to interfere with it. It's difficult just to let it be at the same time as noticing. But letting it be is just, it's however it is. We don't need to worry about the breath, simply to notice. There's nothing to be anxious about. It doesn't have to be this way or that. Even if we think, oh, am I interfering with the breath? Don't worry about it. Just let it come and go, in and out. The actual experience of however it is good enough. It can be very helpful to notice if we're creating an anxiety about, am I doing this right? Just recognize, oh, that's anxiety. That's what that feels like. When the body wants to breathe in, let it breathe. When the body wants to breathe out, let it breathe out. There's nothing to be anxious about. As we breathe in, we might find that we can focus on some point. Perhaps it's the point of contact of the breath as it enters the nostrils. Getting a sense of a place to rest the mind, letting a mind be one-pointed in that sense, to just to rest on one point, one place. As the breath enters, and leaves the body. Relaxing into that place, that point, the center, perhaps. The center of our experience right now. That one point of the entering and leaving of the breath. Relaxing into that one-pointedness, natural state of calm and concentration. Recognizing thoughts when they arise, not being judgmental simply because a thought's arisen in the mind, but noticing that, recognizing it for what it is, might be enough to think, to notice that's a thought, and returning to the breath and that centered point of focus, simply returning to that, letting the busyness of the mind subside over and over, repeatedly returning away from the busy mind to the point of contact of the inhalation and exhalation. as the mind calms down, and rather than seeing thoughts as being a problem, something which is getting in the way, we can turn our attention to the experience of thought arising, or sensations, feeling, perception, whatever arises, those mental states that arise, and get a perspective. So, that's just arising and ceasing. It comes and goes. We might, from that place of calm, be able to get a perspective on conditions that we experience. No, this is just the arising, ceasing of thoughts coming and going, emotions arising, lasting for a while and ceasing. From that spacious, calm place in the mind, a kind of centeredness, sustained attention, we can call it. We might be able to see more clearly the human condition, what it's like to experience the world from this human mind body. Recognizing the impermanent nature of what arises. Or we may feel that there's a struggle here, or that sense of anxiety and struggle. Recognize that's dukkha, that's the unsatisfactoriness of mind. Trying to become happy in an impermanent world is doomed. It's doomed to change. You might recognize the unsatisfactory nature of existence. Or the impersonality of it. That these things arise and cease. They're not mine. You can't really claim them as being yours. What we're experiencing is the human condition. These ways of reflecting can come out of that stillness in the mind. Can change our perspective on our experience. over and over, we can let go. So, oh, yes, I can let go of that. That's let goable. And we can allow in the things which we might be pushing away. Not being pushed and pulled by the grasping mind. We can just rest peacefully, noticing, being aware. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to fix. I seem to often get people telling me that it's quite possible to get a bell from the internet, but that's my inner bell, and I've been it's taken ever since lockdown. Ever since the beginning of lockdown, I've been cultivating my inner bell. So I feel quite attached to my inner bell. I don't really want to have an electronic bell, as much as they might sound very fine and wonderful. I remember writing an article about my inner bell, which I don't know if it's still available. Cultivation of the inner bell. I'm not planning to give any lessons this evening. Something I didn't mention during meditation, and I often do, is kindness. Of course, we should cultivate kindness and an attitude of kindness. I often think that the most important thing in meditation is the right attitude. And maybe it's not always, at the beginning, yes, the most important thing of meditation is the right attitude. So an attitude of kindness, non-judgmental awareness. We talk about that, but the non-judgmental part is an attitude, isn't it? Where we're coming from. You could say that's what attitude is. It's where you're coming from. So you're coming with an attitude of kindness to your experience, whatever it is. And that's very important, because we often are very critical. We bring our conditioned way of thinking to the meditation practice. So what we get when we meditate is just, of course, it's whatever we would normally get. It's not different from our normal. If we're used to being judgmental, then we'll bring that into our meditation practice. That's a reflection of our attitude. Our attitude to meditation is a reflection of our attitude to life. If we're unkind to ourselves in life, we'll bring that to meditation practice. If we hold on to this, like a belief that we're not good enough, then that's what we'll think about our meditation. It's not good enough. And so, and these can be very deep-rooted beliefs that, I should do better, is a kind of, we read that in our school report from when we were very young, and we still believe it. And then we bring that to our meditation practice. Should do better, could try harder. Because I remember that's what my school report said. And that sense of failure, we almost we instill that condition of failure to our meditation practice, because whatever it is, it's not good enough. It doesn't matter however many years we've been practicing, we can still believe it's not good enough, however hard we try, it's not hard enough. And it's an attitude, isn't it, that we're bringing to our meditation practice. And so I think an attitude of kindness and forgiveness is incredibly helpful in our meditation. What we do with our meditation, that's the opportunity to change our attitude to our lives. So when we learn to meditate without judging, in a non-judgmental way, without being self-critical, if we can do that, we can bring that back into our life, our daily life, and then be less judgmental, more forgiving. It can become a habit, and that's the wonderful thing. Meditation, the transformation of meditation is how it can influence our life, a shift of our attitude that can influence the way we live our lives. So it comes back, and our attitudes can change, so that we become less judgmental about ourselves and other people in daily life, because it's a mental training. Meditation is the cultivation of the mind, so it's a mental training. So we're largely, a large part of meditation is simply training or changing our attitude to life, a training that we're undertaking to change our attitude. So that's a big part of meditation practice. Yeah. And so when I talk about our attitude to the body, we can unclench those muscles. That's I'm trying to say, with kindness. We can be kind to ourselves. Why wouldn't we? Because tension in the body is painful, creates pain. And so unclenching those muscles is kind, isn't it? It's being kind. So in the same way, we can unclench the tightness of the anxiety we hold in the mind. It's almost like a muscle. We can unclench that stress, tightness. Often, yes, we do feel it in the body. We can feel the tension of the mind in the body. Stress often reflects itself, and we might, as a physical tightening, maybe in the chest area, for example. So let's say, you hear something you don't like. Somebody says something you don't like to hear, and you get that tightening in the body, tightening. And that sometimes we don't realize our emotional reaction immediately, but we notice it in the body. And then we think, where's that tightness come from? What's that about? And we realize, the body's tightened up. It's almost as though the body's tensing up in response to some emotion that we haven't really noticed. Then we, where's that coming from? We think, oh yes, that's what that person said has reminded me of something that's painful, or I've made a connection there about a past experience that makes me think that person's a threat from what they said. And so that tightness happens, and that can teach us something. Access the emotional we can investigate where that's come from, and understand the emotion behind it. And then can be a shift of attitude, because we can see, oh, this has just arisen by cause and effect, that person said this, and I connected what they said with something in the past that caused the emotion. I felt a feeling to arise, that feeling of aversion, and then I felt that here in the body. And that's what happened. And this is the benefit. One of the benefits of mindfulness is that we can notice things more at a deeper level, and then we start to recognize cause and effect. So that whole sequence of events is seen in an impersonal way. So, oh, that's because of that happened, and then because of that this happened. We're distancing ourselves from that. It was me. It was mine. My past. It was my reaction, my aversion, and my feeling, my pain. No, it's not really. It's not about me and mine anymore, because it's seen more as a cause and effect. Oh, well, because of that, this happened. Then that happened. This happened. And that's how. And then this feeling arose, and that's what happened. That's where it came from. So that that's an example of how there can be a shift of attitude when we cease. We don't buy into or believe that we are that angry person, or that person that said that thing. They were something that the label. We don't need to label, we don't need to create a self in them. They are like this. This is the sort of person they are because they said that. I am the person I'm this sort of person because I felt this. We see it more in a detached cause and effect way. So that can be very freeing to the heart. That is the benefit of meditation, because when those things are happening, it can be very difficult to notice them. Maybe we don't notice that causal process. But so then what we can do in meditation is be more attuned to it. We calm the mind down. If we are able over time to train the mind to be more awake and aware through focusing it steadily. It's a natural calming process. There's nothing special, spectacular, but it means that we're coming from a place of clarity, a bit more clarity. And so when thoughts arise, we can recognize, oh, that's arisen because of that. That's what happened. That's a memory. And then because of that memory, there's this emotional feeling. That's just, I start to use the word just. That's just thought. That's just an emotion. That's just a feeling. That's just a physical reaction. That's what that is. When we train the mind to see things in that way through meditation, that naturally transports itself into a habit, a way of looking at life. It just becomes a habit to see things that way. And it's a surprise. Oh, it's fine. when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm an angry person," I think, wow, you know, why do they think that way? Why do they buy into that way of thinking? Because it's so confusing. Because in the next minute, they say, "But I'm really a nice person." I think, well, yes, that's right. But you're making life so complicated because you're owning these states of mind that just come and go. And we're making them into a person, an entity that, you know, owning them and becoming somebody. This whole becoming process makes life so confusing because the reality is just states of mind come and go. That's what happens. So instead of recognizing what's a universal human condition, we own it and become create a load of problems out of it. It's so sad because it's so unnecessary. It's something we're adding because it's not reality. The reality, you know, these things arise and cease, and then we're adding complication. We're making it complicated. Something that's simple, you know, thought. The mind receives thoughts. That's what the mind does. It's just what the mind does. It can't help it. Why make it complicated? It's just, that's it. The mind thinks, thoughts arise. They come and go. That's all. That's what it does. There's nothing to create a problem out of. But when we identify with it, we complicate it. We make it create problems. I shouldn't think this way. Well, that's pointless. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you shouldn't think this way, you wouldn't think this way. It's the way it is. Thoughts arise. They're like this. These are the thoughts that have arisen. They are like that. It's silly to think I shouldn't think this way. It's how it is. It's true to think that you can change the way you think through, for example, if you habitually engaging a certain kind of certain objects, that mental objects, then that will condition your mind to think in a certain way. If you choose other mental objects, you'll condition your mind to think in a different way. We can understand the conditioned nature of the mind, and because of that, perhaps we reflect different. We're selective, so that we choose. Let's say, if on a television, if you were to watch that, you'd choose your program well, wouldn't you? You wouldn't. You'd choose a program that was like David Attenborough. You think, oh, that's good. That's going to be useful. I'm going to benefit from understanding the world that way. That's useful. Whereas you might avoid another program. By choosing a certain television program, then you're going to get reflection. The mind's going to occupy itself with the reflections around that might be beneficial. Well, it's the same with life. The way you apply the mind is obviously going to condition it. That's true. But in any particular moment of time, whatever the mind is how it is. So that, if it shouldn't be this way, it wouldn't be this way. It's the way it is how it is. It is exactly how it should be. According to the conditions that are applicable in this moment, this is how the mind is. We shouldn't expect it to be anything different from how it is. So there's nothing to be critical or judgmental about. Doesn't mean that we can't influence and change, but there's nothing wrong with the present moment. It's absolutely how it should be. And so we can let go of this judgmental mind. There's nothing wrong with the way it is. But we can notice how it is. But there's nothing wrong with it. And so that judgmental attitude can change. That shift of attitude can change the way we think about life. There's nothing wrong everybody, perhaps you look at the media, it's wrong. This is wrong, that's wrong, everything's wrong. But actually, there's nothing wrong. It's the way it is. There's nothing wrong with the way it is. It's the way it is. It's fine. So then we don't have to judge, be locked into this with, it's not good enough, it shouldn't be like this. Of course, it's just how it is. It's fine. There's nothing we need to worry about. We don't need to create anxiety and stress over the way the world is. It's the way it is. We can influence for good by directing, recognizing the conditioned nature, by cultivating beneficial states of mind. Yeah, that's true. But there's nothing wrong with whatever we experience in the moment, because the present moment is however it is. So even with our best intentions to do things, we can let go of the outcome. Something good, we might think, oh, I'm going to give a really nice present to somebody that will make them happy. Now, we can still give that present. In the present moment, we give it. In the outcome of that, it doesn't matter whether they're happy or not. Our intention's good enough. So in the present, that's complete. We don't need to worry about the future, whether or not they'll be happy. We can do what we do in the present wholeheartedly and just let go of the future. The future will be whatever the future is. And when we get to the future, it'll be good enough, whatever. So we put our effort into the present moment, do the best we can now. Don't worry about the future. And then don't even worry about the present. The present's good enough. We make life so complicated and unnecessarily complicated with this. So our practice of meditation is often associated with simplification. Simplifying, keeping things simple. Don't complicate the uncomplicated. There's nothing we need to complicate. I think it's a path of simplicity, one breath at a time. You don't need to worry about another breath. This is the good enough, this breath. And that's, if you can be aware of that one breath, just noticing that one breath, that's good enough. That's the end of it. If we notice one moment, that's good enough. It's a shift of attitude, really. So I think that attitude, is really beneficial. The right attitude to practice. It's good enough, and we don't need to be critical, but we can be kind by simply not being critical. That is kind. That kindness will follow. So the natural state of mind, the wonderful thing is, it's our nature. Love is natural. Love, kindness, that is our nature. And that's, you could say, this is what the Buddha taught, that the mind is naturally radiant. There's nothing we need to do to fix it. We need to, when you simplify life by letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion, then there's nothing you need to fix. You've got that. It's what's left is naturally pure. So there's nothing to fix. I haven't had any questions. I'm talking away and nobody's asking me any questions. So I'm getting a bit desperate here. So if you don't want to ask any questions in chat, you might be very welcome to unmute yourself.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, Jean.
I just wondered if I could ask you something.
Yes.
If I'm in a supermarket and I'm at the checkout till, I often wonder, shall I just give a metta sweet to everyone, or shall I just check what's in my inside? Just check what's what's my mind doing, and I often wonder, or shall I just concentrate? And I often wonder. I wondered if you give me some thoughts. Really.
What do you mean? I'm not quite sure. When you're at the checkout of the till, should you concentrate or should you what?
Well, I'm at the till in a queue.
Yeah.
Shall I give metta to everyone, or shall I do an insight, see what my mind is up to, or shall I just concentrate on my breath?
I don't think you should do anything. And in a way, yeah, I think we can get very locked into this idea of doing something, and one of the things to really is not a doing. It's not a doing thing. Yes, you can be kind. You can notice metta might come up. Noticing how you feel might come up, might happen. You might notice your breath, that might happen. But you don't really need to do it with a doing mind, the way of doing something. Because when we're doing it to get something. That's the connection. We're doing metta because I want to be kind or something, as though, and I'm not kind enough without that. I've got to do metta to be kind. I've got to reflect as though the reflection isn't naturally there. Or I've got to notice my breath as though, because you don't have to do that because it's already there. The breath is there. There's nothing you need to do. So this way of the doing mind is connected to a kind of trying to get something. It's kind of conditional. If you can when especially when we begin to practice, we get easily caught up in this doing mind. I'm doing metta in order to what? I don't know what, because I want to be kind. Okay, it sounds like a good idea, but there's nothing we need to do to be kind. It's already there. So there is a process, a practice of may I be well and happy, may all beings be well and happy. But it's loving kindness is unconditional. It's not about doing something to get something. We're doing it for nothing. It's for unconditional. It's boundless, unconditional. Loving kindness is not for anything. It's just let it be like loving kindness. Cultivate that. May you be well. Especially, if you feel that somebody is feeling, you feel like they're being aggressive or confrontational or something like that. That kindness, cultivating kindness is very helpful. But it doesn't have to be a doing thing somehow. It's a being rather than doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so then it doesn't get in the way, because I often think that when we get caught up in doing, then you're focusing on the breath, and then when somebody speaks to you, they're getting in the way. No, I'm supposed to be focusing on the breath, and now you're interrupting my concentration. Whereas we're in the, with what we really should be with that person, and the fact that they've spoken to you and be with them fully, that's what practice is, isn't it? So our practice can get in the way if we try too hard, we don't flow with the experience of the moment. I wonder if anyone else has had that experience of, I've heard it many times when people are talking about things like, oh, when I come to the rush hour in London and I get through the rush hour by focusing on my breath. I just think, well, that's a missed opportunity. There's so much to experience in the rush hour that you don't need to focus. Why focus on your breath when there's so much to notice, so much to experience? I think that they're trying. I always get the feeling that's trying too hard. It's not really the right environment to focus on the breath. It's much more, so much going on. Why not be present with that? In my experience, I just enjoy the what's happening, what's going on. I for example, I used to go to Victoria Station when going to the Buddhist Society. I'd go into Pret a Manger for a cup of tea, and I'd sit there and looking out at people passing by. And I remember doing a meditation. I was sitting there, and I just noticed. I saw all these people passing by, and I'm forming these views and opinions about all these people. It's just happening. That person looks like this. They're this sort of person. Oh, that person looks like that. That's the sort of person they are. Well, that's ridiculous. And maybe I wonder if I can do that by looking at their feet. So I focused on people's feet. I completely disregarded the rest of them, but I just looked at their shoes, their feet, their shoes, the way they walk, the way they move their feet and their shoes. And I thought, how can I form an opinion about these people based on the way they're walking and their feet? And I realized I could do it with shoes. That's the sort of person they are. Look at the shoes, look at the way they walk, their feet, and I thought, this is how ridiculous. It's really wonderful to experiment with these things. Like, oh wow, I can even do it with just looking at the way somebody's walking, moving their feet. I can hold this kind of opinion about them. That's nonsense. And that kind of way of, that was a meditation, kind of meditation, just to, oh, yes, that was quite illuminating. The ridiculous, that how it is. And so as a way to reflect, to sometimes to take the mind to extremes, to kind of let the mind go completely wild, really, I can really make an opinion out of this if I try. Then, no, that's ridiculous. How stupid. It brings it into, because he realized you see the humorous side of it. You start to laugh and you think, oh, yes, this is ridiculous. Because you've then established it as a principle, then you realize it's true. It's true for everything. This whole process of forming opinions about these perceptions that we form around people and the way they behave is made up. We make it all up. It's all fabricated. It's all an illusion. We make the whole thing up. None of it's reliable. And it's really useful to realize that. We don't trust it. And that's wonderful, because then that means we can treat people as human beings. And that's wonderful. But also, there are other ways to reflect, I think, like how deep-rooted our conditioning is. That's fascinating, you know, that what causes these perceptions to arise and how deep-rooted that conditioning is. And it can be quite unpleasant. You think, well, that's horrible. To think that way. Why do I think this way? Why did I form that opinion about that person? Because of that, because of the way they looked like this. And I immediately felt aversion towards them. And where's that coming from? And when you look back, you don't even know where it's coming from. I used to have, I noticed a kind of aversion to people with mustaches. It was weird. And, you know, innocent people with mustaches, you know, for some reason I thought, oh no, I kind of recoiled from them. And then I thought, well, I know that's coming from somewhere. But if I were to look back at my experience, I could make up a story. I could say, yes, well, my grandfather had a mustache and he wasn't very nice to me. I could say that, and maybe there's something in it, maybe it's true. It doesn't really matter, because the point is, those people with mustaches are totally innocent. It's not their fault they chose to have a mustache. And it's completely ridiculous for that to make a difference. And so you just see, it doesn't matter why, but you just have to let it go. It's amazing. I remember going on a training course once. It was about to do or not to do, but it was spelled tattoo or not tattoo. It was about, what is your perception and conditioning around people with tattoos? That was fascinating. Yes, Nikki.
Hi, thanks, Martin. Are you saying, can we get on with everybody? I mean, because I don't.
No.
I mean, so what's that about when you, because at some point you've got to make a judgment and say, I can't work with you.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a Desert Island Disc on Sunday, and the gentleman phones for you, CEO, was saying how he had to sack people, because if they don't perform. So we all have to judge, and we all have to criticize to a certain degree, and we have to, in a professional way, and in a personal way, we might say, well, I can't live with you anymore, and I have to divorce. So because that's, sometimes I find it a bit too difficult, the teaching, because you have to judge, you have to criticize, and people criticize me in turn. So I just
like to say,
how do you get on with people that you don't get on with?
Yeah, I was just got to say something quite brief, because we haven't got much time, but one thing that's very useful to reflect on, I think, is that loving kindness is unconditional. So we don't pick and choose in the field of loving kindness. We don't say one person's more worthy of being loved than another. So the principle of loving kindness is universal. It's completely universal. We can't choose, yet we can choose who our friends are. So then you think, oh, how can that be? That, but that's right. You can choose who you spend your time with. So, in terms of Kalyanamitta, for example, that phrase that you might be aware of as a good spiritual friend, somebody who, like today, this evening, we've chosen to spend our time together. We've chosen to do that. So, in a sense, we've chosen our friends, haven't we? But in the context of loving kindness, we have to practice that unconditionally. We can't choose. So it's interesting to choose that, to get that balance. Yes, you do have to judge. It's important and it's useful to choose our friends well, because they influence us enormously. If you could, there's so many times like young people who've made bad choices about who their friends are, and it's affected, of course, it influences them for the rest of their lives, and it's horrible. So choosing your friends well is incredibly important. Yet, when we practice loving kindness, we do it equally to everyone. We don't discriminate. So it's worth investigating. Maybe you would like to spend a little time investigating that, as to what the difference is between choosing your friends and what loving kindness is. So loving kindness is universal. It means that we can, even someone who's hurt us, we can cultivate loving kindness towards, but we don't have to go back and let them hurt us again. That's the difference. So you can choose your friends well, but you don't have, but loving kindness is universal. I don't know if that helps. I know it's not completely answered your question, but it's answered a part of it, perhaps.
No,
If I can say something very quickly there. There is another aspect as well, which is, someone is getting on our nerves right now. Forget about the someone, what is happening in your body, your emotion. Are you holding it, or is it going all over the place? Judgments and rejecting. And so there is that side of the practice, which is looking after yourself, especially when emotions arise.
Yes, we need to look after ourselves. That is an attitude of kindness, to be kind to ourselves, isn't it? It's part of loving kindness. Yeah. Well, Nikki, I'm sorry I felt like I would have loved to have spent longer answering your question, but I think was that helpful?
Yes, I just, sometimes I find the teaching a little bit idealistic for me, or I struggle with it. Not that it's a big issue. I had a, if you're in a work situation and you're not getting on, you either accept it or find a positive or leave. And I often leave, or I have left. And it's just an example, just the way somebody might leave a marriage or a toxic relationship. Not that I'm going through that. I'm just giving those as examples. So at some point you have to make a hard choice and move on. And sometimes it's refreshing when you hear somebody like a nun or anybody like yourself. I think I heard a nun who said she was divorced. So it's like, well, you can't keep pushing and pushing if something is not working for you. You have to accept and give up on it. You have to critique it. You have to say, that's a criticism, that's a judgment, isn't it? This relationship isn't working. And I found the fact that this nun was divorced more helpful than all the teaching on metta. Just that her saying that she was divorced, because she made a decision, a hard decision, and that was more helpful. That was helpful.
Yes, I think when you investigate, if you investigate what loving kindness is, and bear in mind that it isn't about just being a doormat. It's about It's not that. It's being kind to ourselves as well as others, but ultimately it's cultivating it there's no limit. to loving kindness, but we can choose our friends. We can decide how we live our lives, and we can do what's beneficial. It's not just being non-judgmental doesn't mean that we can't make choices about life.
I get it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to just finish with a final closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Well, thank you for coming along this evening. And see you next week, perhaps. I'll be here. Bye.